Oh, actually, I don't have to imagine it because there's actually scholarly articles that exist about fatphobia and its ties to racism. In fact, fatphobia's ties to racism is so widely known and accepted that you can literally do a quick Google search and find a ton of maybe more easily digestible resources that will help you learn more about this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking this and for bringing this up. And I really should have touched on it, so thank you for kind of calling me in about that because I do need to remember to address that as well. Yes. Um, Anti-fatness and fat phobia originated in anti-black racism, specifically anti-black racism and anti-Latine racism. I think it started with black folks being policed and then moved to Latino people being policed, and now everyone is policed. So yes, I do still think that it definitely has a trace to ableism, and I think it does tie into ableism, and I do think that it is a form of ableism. But yes, it 100% started as anti-black white supremacist racism. And that is very important to remember. So thank you for pointing that out again.
Yo yo and hello, my name is Lydia, and on today's episode of my 25-pound yo yo, we will be revisiting the phrase fat phobia is rooted in racism. Now, last week I covered this from the standpoint of why does it matter? Obesity is unhealthy. It doesn't matter what the roots are, it's still unhealthy. But today I'd like to look at it from a different angle, and that is that phrase is actually very damaging. And it really, really bothers me as a racialized person when people frequently toss around, it's rooted in racism, because it does more harm than good to people that actually experience racialized discrimination. I answered a few comments last week about this, and I thought I should just put all this into a new video. So why don't we watch this next clip, then come back and discuss. Why the phrase, it's rooted in racism, needs to stop. Please don't stand up for me. I don't agree with you. When non-racialized people comment that something is based in racism, they draw attention to those of us that are racialized that don't want that attention. It's like your friend defending you to your bully. It might start off in the right place, but then your friend starts hurling other words at the bully that are not yours. Then your friend walks away and you are left dealing with the bully, assuming that you think the same as your friend. Please stop diluting what racism is. When we attach racism to everything, it loses its meaning. If we become too accustomed to everything being rooted in racism, we won't react appropriately when real racism happens. We know why you do it. When you tell someone what they think is rooted in racism, you've already put them on the defense because all they can hear is, "You think I'm racist?" This has a twofold effect. You can dismiss any rebuttal that the other person has as being racist, and or you can get your opponent all hung up on defending themselves as not racist that they pivot away from what you were talking about in the first place. So essentially, when people say something is rooted in racism, they can shield themselves from actually having to address the comment by putting their opponent on the defense. So those are some of the reasons why I dislike the phrase, it's rooted in racism. It draws attention to racialized people that don't want that attention. It dilutes the meaning of what racism really is. And it allows people a way to avoid answering questions by labeling people as racists and dismissing anything they have to say because it's racist. But my biggest issue with this phrase is that whenever people say it's rooted in racism, or even cite some similarities without saying how it's different, you're essentially saying it's the same. But whenever you call them on it, they say stuff like this. Which is true. You didn't say that. You just said that the two are rooted together and you draw some parallels. But without drawing the differences, you are essentially saying that the two are the same. But lucky for you, I am here and I am going to explain how they are the same and also how they are very, very different. So let's go. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, I am not going to get into the obvious one. The obvious one being you can control your weight, but you can't control your race. But I want to show that, let's say that you can't control your weight. I don't believe that, but let's say you can't. They are still very, very different. Let's start with the similarities. And the one I want to open with is size and color. Many fat activists complain that the world is not built for them. And they will say things like the sizes of clothing and the sizes of chairs just don't meet their needs. But racialized women have the same issues when it comes to color. It's difficult to find our color for things like makeup and hosiery and lingerie. Many of us have to seek specialty stores to find stuff that actually matches us, the same way that plus size people find specialty stores that sell what they need. Yes, it's inconvenient, but recognize that I don't meet their supply and demand. There's not as many people that are my shade as there are of shades of white, so therefore they don't make as many options. But there are options online, and I find those options online. Yes, I'm inconvenienced, but I don't see this as being racist. I think I've spent the past 20 years looking for the perfect nude shoe. And when I say perfect, I just mean fits and matches. But that is an impossibility for me because the selection for nude shoes for white people looks like this. And the selection of shoes for brown people looks like this. So it's very difficult for brown people to find something that's nude. And I know that that's probably not something that a lot of white people have considered in the past, but this is a real struggle. But again, it's not racist. The other argument I've heard many times is if we don't have plus size clothing in all the sizes available in stores, then people that are going to that last minute meeting don't have an option. Oh, they have a job interview. They don't have anything that fits them. Do you know what happens when my one bra that actually matches my skin breaks? All of my white shirts are out of commission. I have one bra that matches me, one. And anytime I find any sort of lingerie that actually matches my skin tone, I try to buy as many of them as possible. And that is because whenever you wear white, you're supposed to have undergarments that match your skin so it doesn't see through. It's a very rare find. That's why all women's underwear is like beige and creamy. It matches white people. So if you want to talk about last minute preparations, like if I'm out of makeup, if I'm out of hose, if I don't have a bra in the right color, that completely tanks what I was supposed to wear for that important job interview. But is it racist? No, it's inconvenient, but it's not racist. So now let's get into the assumptions that get made about fat people and racialized people. A lot of assumptions are made about our health, our intelligence, our abilities, and what we eat. People will assume that people of a certain racialized group are more likely to develop certain diseases. People will assume that fat people are also unhealthy. People will assume that certain racialized groups are smarter than others, or stupider than others, or better at sports. And people will assume that fat people can't do certain activities because of their size. People will also assume that racialized people eat spicy or exotic food all the time. And people will assume that fat people eat all day. None of these assumptions are nice. And no, I don't condone any of this behavior. And we should do something to address it. But calling people fatphobic racists is not the way to do it. You see, at work, we have anti-racism training, and part of it includes training on microaggressions. And the reason why we call them microaggressions is because we don't want to barrel into an office and tell everyone, you're all a bunch of racists and this is how you need to change, which seems to be what fat activists are doing. I know the difference between racism and a microaggression. A microaggression is something that people do without knowing that it's harmful. It's when people ask me all the time, where are you from? And when I say that I'm Canadian, they go, no, where are you from really? And they don't accept Canadian as an answer. Those sort of things. I don't think that those are intentionally hateful, but they are microaggressions. The same way as someone will notice if you're eating a salad at work or ask if you're on a diet. Like, these are things that are not polite and people need to be aware of, but they are not hate speech. Racialized people deal with these things all the time. All the time. But these are the annoyances and these are the microaggressions. When people ask me if I've experienced racism in my life, I say yes. And if they ask me for examples, I don't say that store doesn't sell my color of foundation, or I couldn't find the right nude shoe, or my boss asked me what curry I was bringing to the potluck. I don't actually mention any of those things. What I'll say is, yeah, when I was 5 years old and my parents were trying to buy us a new house, all the neighbors on that street got upset because they didn't want the existing owner to sell to a bunch of blackies. I will say that when I was in grade 1, I had a little girl in the class say that only white people have names and refused to use my name and got my other classmates to not use my name for the rest of the year because only white people have names. When I was in London, I had a waitress mutter slurs under her breath the entire time she served me, then called the cops on me and said that I had been stealing her tips, even though I had a conversation with the person beside me and they never saw me move. Now, these things were racist. When these things happen, you feel it in your core. You feel it in your bones. And this is the feeling that we want other people to know. Why racism hurts. I don't want people to equate racism with not being able to find your favorite almond milk in the store. Racism is real hate. It makes you feel that you are unwanted and don't deserve to exist. And I don't see any of these fatphobic incidents as anywhere near the same. So the comment that fatphobia is rooted in racism actually makes racism worse. It draws attention to racialized people that didn't say those things and become targets of other groups that think that they're offended because something is racist when they never said it was racist in the first place. It dilutes the meaning of racism so that people think that racism is simply just not having something that you want rather than being treated cruelly and with hate. And it gives people an out to dismiss your opinion without actually hearing you out because they can just label you as racist. The parts that we overlap on are the inconveniences and at most the microaggressions, but not the hate. The hate is what makes racism racism. But alas, this is my 25-pound yo-yo, and not fatphobia is rooted in racism, therefore it's the same thing. So until next time, yo-yo and let's go.